That is us all good to go.
Wonderful.
So whenever you're ready.
My phone literally just went off as I was thinking I should probably make sure my phone.
There's this thing
That's
called
why I left my phone
do not
in
disturb.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you were a professional, you would have left your phone out.
I have never been a professional anything. So, welcome to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I am Dougal.
And I'm Gil.
And we are joined today by the illustrious Phil Harris. How are you doing, Phil?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
No problem. How, as a kind of background, like we know you, but for people who are listening and don't know you, which is ridiculous, could you give us a little bit of background about yourself within the games scene?
Yeah, my name's Phil Harris, and I killed my first person at 8 years old.
Oh, you fit right in.
Yeah, good. I run Conpulsion, which is Edinburgh-based role-playing convention. It's the oldest role-playing convention in Scotland now. It's a small charity convention. It's run through the Students' Union, so it changes fundamentally a lot. And I think that's really, really good for a convention. I've gone to a lot of major conventions, and when you go year on year on year, you find it's the same talks and things like this. So with different convention organizers, it means that the whole remit of Compulsion actually changes. It's a bane to the convention as well, but we're lovely and we love people to come along, and we're in the Pleasance on the 10th and 11th of April next year, which is 2026. Just in case this podcast comes at some strange point of time.
Oh yeah, we'll wait till 2030 until we bring this one out.
That's great. I'm also help out at Tabletop Scotland. I run the Tabletop Game Jam at Tabletop Scotland. Dave Wright contacted me just before the pandemic, but then obviously there was the pandemic, so it got delayed until we moved to the Royal Highland Centre. That's a real pleasure as well. I work in the video games industry. I work on MMORPGs in general, but I work with a lot of indies. I do a lot of mentoring there, and I write, and I keep myself busy as well.
Oh, I'm glad
with something else.
Yeah,
podcast occasionally.
Yeah.
Oh, podcast. I was going to say, I'm glad we get to be part of the busy part of that thing.
Gotta make some time.
Yeah, right?
Exactly.
As someone who has been in and amongst the sort of back end of games design when it comes to board games, RPGs, and video games, how do you find? We were talking with Dave Beck a little while ago from Patterson Games, who is a game design teacher in Wisconsin in America, and he teaches video game design, but game design as a whole, and he obviously makes board games as well. How do you find the crossover between design philosophies and sort of mechanically between all of these different kind of media, I guess?
So when I was really, really young, my dad played a lot of board games, and I sort of broke out into role-playing games to rebel. It's the worst type of rebellion.
I was going to say,
I know.
It's a sideways rebel. I was like, I want to rebel a bit.
It's like a swimmer having a child that becomes a diver just because they want to.
Yeah, I don't want to do the full pool, but
deep down,
I get it.
And that actually sort of led me into sort of narrative fields as well, because tabletop role-playing tends to have more narrative than board games, although there is a narrative in board games. If you have a board game without any narrative, it's poor, and that narrative is between the players. So I started inventing my own games really early age, about 10, 12. I wrote my first role-playing system based on TSR-like rules and those ideas, and very much on Traveller, which I felt was like a really, really fundamental system. And Traveller actually taught me the thing that I always talk about, which is simple can become complex, but complex can never become simple. And I think when you look at certain people's designs, they create something far too complex, when realistically you want the players to learn these simple mechanics really, really nicely and quickly so that they can go on and play the game. Now, video games in their own sense have just allowed more data to be processed and crushed at the same period of time, so that you can give more instantaneous reactions to the players going forwards. But fundamentally, I don't think that they are very, very different. They have more complex formulas because those formulas can be calculated out, so they can cover the dice rolls and the functionality that's going on. But at their root, I think any good tabletop game can be like converted into a video game. And in that conversion can possibly be enhanced because of free flow, because of graphics, because it can realize the world that the people want to see. The thing with the narrative part of this is that you understand through tabletop role playing and through of all types and tabletop board games, people imagine the world in their mind. They see that thing. It's like my best example of this is Asterix. I loved the Asterix comics as a child. I still love them. I think they're absolutely brilliant. But all the cartoons, all the series and things like this never had the voices right. It was never the voices I imagined. The jokes didn't play the way that I imagined until the most recent one on Netflix, where they just ticks every box correctly. They modernized it it's the Great Big Fight. They've modernized it and they've done it in the right way. And I think the thing for me, especially in like video games, is understanding the player base and what the player base really, really wants and what the player base are actually looking for and like expanding that out. And my first opportunity to really, really deal with that was when I worked on Celtic Heroes for mobile in Glasgow at the time, which was one of the earliest MMORPGs on mobile phone. And getting to know the players and the player base really, really well just meant that I could create things that they really, really attuned to. And that was really, really great. And that was from like the design process up. So I'm a creative and a concept designer. I can do systems design. I can sort of do it in my sleep because I did degree level math and it was absolutely like fine. And I'm a narrative designer. And I'm also a content designer. So I understand how level design works and how that works really, really effectively. And then that can track actually back into like board games as well. So it can track back into board game design. I've just designed my own role-playing system, which is about the sixth I've done. I've just made it into a pack of cards, no dice. It's just the system, no fuss, just something that people can carry about with them and go, hey, would you like to like do some role playing? And, you know, if it was the 80s, we'd have a terrible like advert on TV where people were finishing their dinner party and it's just like, should we clear the dishes? Or we could role play it out. And I like that type of thing. I like to be in like that creative space and work with people to develop their knowledge of games. But anything that I come up with doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. It's just like my concept and my idea. It's my challenge. But the feedback I've generally had from like the people who've like been like my mentees or I've taught at like periods of time or I've worked with has been really, really good.
When thinking about MMORPGs and especially how they maybe differ from tabletop RPGs or board games, I'm just curious about if we're talking about the persona of a typical player in terms of what is it that they are looking for in terms of an experience that means that when you're thinking of how to design a particular aspect, you draw on, you know, that filing cabinet of mechanics versus another one. Someone who's really into RPGs or like tabletop RPGs might not really be into board games because they love the narrative aspect a lot more. They might be into certain types, and vice versa. So I'd love to like learn as a non-MMORPG player. I'm curious about what makes that genre attractive from a design perspective.
Shame, Gelb. Shame.
I'm just not good. I'm not. My thumbs don't work.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
I ain't good at the joystick stuff.
Oh, it's why you hold cups so weird as well. Just thumbs up the whole time.
Yeah, and I spill all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah. It's not my drool.
It's finally explained. That's great. Anyway, sorry, getting in the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Community. So the key thing for an MMORPG is that every time you go in, it's like being at a convention with a lot of people who are your friends. They're the people you're not going to get along with. They're not going to be part of your community. There are going to be the people that you get annoyed with the way that they play. And it's also sometimes an unheard community. So I play Destiny 2 a lot. It's gone through some radical changes just very recently, which I could talk about. And The thing is that when I play with a couple of friends on a Monday night, I play at other times with just people I don't know. But it's the fact that you can tell by the way that they play, how often they play, whether you feel that you want to help them, whether they're being an arse in the game and you just like block them so that you don't have to play with them again in the future. So you build this community around things. It was really, really interesting with Celtic Heroes. I remember looking at some of the analytics and we were finding that 40% of the time in the game, the players were sitting static because they were just talking in the community and they were like chatting. And that was really, really key. When they had the forums, that was key as well. And so the community really, really loves opportunity and innovation. But that innovation has to be like stemmed with what the company needs as well. So an MMORPG, like these studios don't do it for free. You know, you have to pay people. And one of the things, again, when I'm teaching designers is understand what every second of player time means to the player, what the value constant of that is. Because if you can understand what the value constant of 1 second is, you can literally, like, monetization shouldn't be a problem because you should be able to just provide enough content for the players to enjoy and engage with. And so, Galbs, like, some of the players would be like, I really, really like fighting like the bosses and I want to do raids. Some of them like dungeons, which are like a smaller, like more compacted raid. Some of them just like the free-form play of like wandering around and just like playing with just like strangers and like engaging in like different simpler activities. And when you can create a game which has all of those like different opportunities, all of those different options there, then you're sort of hitting that golden like spark. And what we did with Celtic Heroes when I rewrote the whole of the starting experience was we really increased retention of that starting experience. I got my character naked, not me, and like went through with
Commas are important.
Yes, because they wouldn't have accepted it in the studio. I went through the
Only reason why you didn't do it. Just to clarify.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And went through like the game for the first 18 levels, checking that you could just get through if the player was deliberately trying to be really, really stupid here. And deliberately like not things like this, because then once you've got them over a certain stage, you've got them. Now, whether they're a paying player or a non-paying player is a completely different thing. With a tabletop role-playing game, you buy the books or you take the books out of the library and like you play the game. But in this instance, you have to remember that non-paying players like are content for paying players. So they provide more things that the paying players can like work with. And you find certain guilds where the richer paying players, generally known as whales, I'm not really happy with that term, but generally known as whales, sometimes just like buy stuff for the rest of their like community and things like this because they want their community to go forward. They want to be able to do these boss raids, but they want to do it with people that they trust going forwards. So yeah, working on Celtic Heroes was like really, really good. The rules that I proved there, I went to BigPoint and I worked on a couple of their browser MMORPGs, Seafight and Dark Orbit. And I wanted to prove that I could do what I did at like Celtic Heroes there, that it wasn't just a flash in the pan, that like my logic and like my ideas went forward. And we did. I remember standing next to Indra, wonderful designer, absolutely wonderful designer, now sort of UX Meister basically in Germany and things like this. Indra and me were like looking at the stats for like Seafight when 3 months after I'd come in, and Indra said, that rise in the stats, that's you, that is. And I was just like, it doesn't look like me, but it was
It had clothes on.
Yeah,
It had clothes on. Yeah,
exactly. So,
and also we're having this conversation. Would you mind putting some pants on right now? Yeah, that would be really, really useful.
I like it.
I'm pointing at stats and graphs, but it's mainly to keep my eyes fixed on the board and nothing else. No, I've been there.
So it's really, really good when you know And when you can do it, you understand all the triggers that you need to look at for like the players. And the thing that you really, really need to do is you don't need to be taking the players for a ride. If the players feel that they're being taken for a ride, which is part of what's happening in Destiny 2 at the moment, they'll back off. And I think you see that similarly with Hasbro and like Dungeons and Dragons at the moment, that there's a real question with the player base, because there's a player base that loves Dungeons and Dragons, like they really, really do. But there's a bit of them which are going, are we being taken for a ride here? And if they are, they'll never forgive them. They really, really will never forgive them. Hasbro has a habit of Discourse on Dungeons and Discourse talked about this, likening Dungeons and Dragons and Hasbro might treat them like My Little Pony. Like they basically mothball Dungeons and Dragons for a long enough time that people have forgotten what they did with like My Little Pony. Where are the dead ponies, Hasbro? And then like come back and bring it back in a new format. And I think she's right in some ways. There's a lot to be said for like that methodology of like out of the mists comes like this like old product. And we see it with like board games and a whole bunch of other things, that older games, when they make a return, Kickstarter's a really, really good example of this like working really, really well. I've backed the Ace of Aces like Kickstarter.
Yes.
I can't wait for my Ace of Aces set. I bought 2 sets so I could send one up to my friend in Aberdeen so we could play together. And it's just like, and Ace of Aces again was one of those really, really early board games I cut my teeth on. And I was just like, this is like flying a plane. It's just like, apart from I wasn't in World War One and
Wait, we're going to have to shut down the podcast. We only wanted people who'd added to the beginning of World War One here. What a shame. That was lovely. Thank you very No. So to go back to a couple of things that you were saying there, the whales thing I found really interesting. It is, as you say, in computer games, it is the person who buys all the things, and they're the ones who keep the game running, essentially, because most people don't pay money. I find that within board games, there is that person as well, but in a very different way. It is the person who I have been and still am, who buys all the games, who then wants to play it with their friends all the time. They're usually the person with a house filled with games, and people will go around there to go and play games. And that, I think, does help the industry kind of keep going. But I found a really interesting thing from what you were saying about community there within MMOs and what people want and how that works, because there is that side of things online which doesn't happen in a physical space. When it comes to both tabletop RPGs and board games, you are face to face with people a majority of the time. You are reacting to other people's emotional states. You do not have the ability to just mute someone at the table, for example, or block them and never have them come back again, at least until after that evening, and then you say, oh, I moved, I'm really sorry, and you never tell them where. But you have...
How many times?
That, oh gosh, so many. I don't live in Edinburgh anymore. No, it's that thing of you don't have the possibility of being as much of an asshole as you do with the anonymity that you have online, even with your name. Online you have an avatar, you have some sort of pseudonym you are known as, which is not you. So it often leads to behavior, I think, that people wouldn't do in regular everyday life. And I think that pseudonym can come through with tabletop role-playing games, for example, where you are playing as a character, but you are still face-to-face with other people and you have to justify your actions. It's not based upon a purely mechanical, we are in a false world, therefore I can do whatever I want and I can shoot you in the face over and over again, and whatever happens with that. There is some justification you have to do within the social confines of the group you are playing with. And I think that's in tabletop role-playing and hugely in board games as well. And I find that crossover really interesting, and the difference between player action and intent to be a massively sort of interesting thing to think about as well. Have you, within your tabletop game design or even board game design things, found this to be the case, that people are genuinely nicer, or at least more socially aware of what other people are doing and how other people are, to not have those big arguments or anything that can happen online?
There's been twice that I've asked people to leave games. And, I'm 55 now, and, twice is, I think, good.
The first one was in the war.
Yeah.
I was about to say, so not World War I.
No.
Letting you know.
Oh, got you.
Out of the tent.
More people come and join.
Out of the tent. Over the top of you. And both of them were for situations where they'd disturbed or distressed other players. And that was unacceptable for me. I've also asked another player to take a break, and they did, and they came back, and that was absolutely like fantastic. I spend a lot of time considering who the players in my group are and what roles best suit them. And this doesn't mean that I drive them away from what they want to play and things like this. But as a games master, you can sort of manipulate people into the most useful role around the table so that everybody has full entertainment and things like this. I've never really been a fan of rules jockeys. And that's generally why I've made my own systems, because then I become like the person who understands the rules.
jockey.
Yeah, no one can ever say,
don't
no,
like
that's
any
not
other.
how that works. Actually, I have a +6 on this. You're like, no, you don't. I made the rules.
But notwithstanding it, when I did the Student Nationals a number of years ago, and I had to write a scenario, because I freeform all my role playing. I have a concept and an idea, and then I freeformed a 10-year campaign, for God's sake. And that ended up having like over 74 players at one point in 3 different games during like the week, all of whom could impact on each other's like game and like characters, which was like absolutely like fantastic. It was the point where I realized I could probably like write and create worlds, because that's what narrative design is about. It's not just about writing. So it becomes like a fact that, yes, I think online, obviously, people have like this like hidden persona where they can be nasty. But the fact is, you can just block them. Or if you suddenly find the whole community is blocking you, then possibly, you should.
They're all wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there ways that when you're thinking about it, you can introduce different mechanics in order to clarify the type of situation or try and reduce that, that potential from happening? So like, for example, on a board game side, there's the persona that you're always having to consider is the person who just likes to cheat. They just like to do that. So are there ways that you can change it so that it's actually harder for you to cheat than, having to trust somebody to make a decision? Or social deduction games, some people don't like being mean. So if you're saying it out in front that this is a game where you're supposed to be mean, it gives people license to be mean to each other in the confines of the game. So do things like that exist when you're thinking about it from an RPG side or an MMORPG?
Yes, they can do. For an MMORPG, it's about like making sure that the content's there and that the challenges are there. Within a tabletop role-playing game, that's really, really interesting. And I think when you're doing convention games, I think convention games are the highest risk thing. That's why there's the X card and things like this. It's just like, this subject is like, I'm uncomfortable with this subject going forwards. Pretty much every one of the games that I've done conventions has had an 18 plus like warning, because I deal with like quite deep like psychological like concepts when we're doing the games, and that means I tend to get the players that I want, because they're the players who are used to like those games and they really, really love them. And then there's usually one other player like coming along. But I think it's really, really important to, as a games master, to be aware, and I think this is out with any systems within the game, is to be aware of like the players around them and like the emotions of the players around them and how they're being impacted by the game. And you should be able to see when people are uncomfortable. You should be able to see when people are unhappy and what that means to them. And you should be able to just like steer off that subject. So if you have somebody who's being really, really forceful, like going back to the World War I analogy, you're playing a World War I like role-playing game. It was a bloody war, but they're really digging into what's happening in the trenches and rats and things like this. Not to go into like detail, because then it just makes this an uncomfortable,
stuck in the trenches.
conversation. And you just have to effectively, without obviously laying your hand on their shoulder and go, it's enough. Now let's just like move on. We've got the point. Everybody understands what's going on here. And things like this. It's just like the other way I do it is I take a short break. It's just like, let's go and get a coffee. And like, then we'll sit back down and we'll continue like the session here.
Has that ever happened to you in terms of you've maybe gotten too into it while you've been playing and someone's been like, oh, let's take a break?
No, I don't think it has. But I've always sort of been aware of my audience, and I sort of really, really early on, because my dad ran my first like role-playing game and then said, I haven't got the time to do this. So I took it over. So I've spent much more time as a games
GM,
master. Yeah. But of the most amusing stories, like going forwards, my friend did his own version of a Call of Cthulhu game where I was the Batman to somebody else's like master and things like this. And my character went barking mad at the end of the first session. And I was diarying everything for people. And I was actually doing a proper like diary. And so I just started writing like madness in like the diary going forwards. And about 10 sessions later, they really needed what was in the diary. And then they'd realized I'd gone like crazy after me saying that glasses were the eyes to the soul, and tried to kill everybody with like glasses on, and so they wrestled me to the ground and took the diary off me. And my friend Jasper said, right, okay, we've got like the information here, and then he like flipped through like the pages, and he was just like, and then he just chucked it away and he said, and this is all rubbish. And it was great because it fitted with like the idiom of like the game. I know that different people have different levels that they want to role play in a role playing game, and having that like mix of people who really, really want to actively like play and those who don't, I think it's organic. It's really, really organic. I did a convention game called The Room, which had a great like selection of like players along in it. And I'd given a little bit of background. There was a secret door in things like this. And I sort of needed 3 adult characters. So the uncle had come around to help fix up the new house that they'd moved into, and the mum and dad. And the players read it and they were just like, oh, the uncle's having an affair with the mother. So it's like, is he? Where did I write that? And so they played that out, and it became this amazing comedy session with like this kitchen sink drama like happening around like the table. And it's because all the players just really, really took to it. They were just like, oh, we've never had this level of freeformness that we can do in this like role-playing game. Let's just go for it and let's see if we can like break Phil. They tried to break me much more when they did Pokemon versus Predators, which they bought as a game for me to like run at Compulsion. I'd sort of sold it for charity, and there was just a point where, this is when I was still smoking, where I just went outside TV and just had a couple of like cigarettes while they were just evolving like their Pokemon on their own. I didn't need to be there.
I mean, I'm desperate now to play Pokemon versus Predators. It sounds amazing. It's interesting bringing...
Probably quite oddish.
Yep, that silence was long enough. Bringing that into board game design as well, I find it really interesting having that kind of thing of people getting in the way of other people and how to make that work, not only in a narrative, but in a different game design. There's a wonderful game coming out by Rocknest Games called Small Folk, which is a delightful game where you are trying to race other people or get to certain things before other people do, and you can do things to kind of take some cards before other people go to. But it has this wonderful mechanic of if certain characters have a little symbol next to them, so that if you get another character of the same type or one of this other specific type that they're looking for, they then become friends and you get the friendship bonus for these things. And I've never had a kind of what could be a aggressive competitive game feel so delightfully friendly and pleasant to play because of this. It is a little
in a way.
the idea that it's not, I'm taking these cards and then I'm beating you, or I'm doing that. I'm getting more points than you, but more importantly, now I have my merman. He's right next to the sailor. They are best friends, and I did that, and it's delightful. Like, there are, I think, mechanics within board games at least, and sometimes within tabletop role-playing games, that are designed to, even though they are mechanically similar to a combat or something like that, are focused upon a positive emotion, which I think can help break down that kind of negative narrative that can come through with other mechanics that can be purely combat focused or anything else like that. So within board games, I definitely see it. How have you found narrative design within board games to be restricted by the mechanics compared to the mechanics of board games actually introducing the narrative?
So it's very, very much about how the game was originally constructed. If you go about trying to create a narrative game, then narrative should be at the heart of it, and you should be able to like create a storytelling game of one form or another. And I would class like Talisman within like that storytelling game like environment. And it's still just sort of rings like going up to like the final thing, and but with the immense amount of add-on packs. It's just like DLC at that time of creation was like amazing. But the narrative, sometimes like the players will put the narrative on themselves. And again, it's a bit like that role-playing group that it will just take a narrative. There's the thing about Tetris, and like people, even though it's just a puzzle game and it's just about slotting blocks in, some people go, oh, I'm building a wall, or I'm building a rocket ship, or I'm building this type of thing, because they need to like humanize it for themselves so that they don't feel that they're just going through like a factory procedure. And I think the most important thing within any type of game is like that you don't feel that you're going through a factory procedure unless the game is deliberately done that way. And I was at the Scotland Game Conference where they made a game where you were going through the factory procedure, and it was brilliant. It was because it ticked all the boxes, because you didn't have games like that. So you can look at games like old game Election and things like this, where my dad and his board game group used to play Election. They just brought it out every time there was an election. And so it was like topical, and it allowed them to discuss the format of elections beyond like the subject of like the election. So the mechanics themselves can lead people to productively like play. Deep Regrets is a very, very good example of this, where I've played Deep Regrets with a whole bunch of people who've played Dredge, which is the video game version of it. And these people are just like, oh, they take on Dredge format in the game, whether the game is meant to be anything like Dredge or not. And so you get people like doing their voices, oh, that looks like a bad catch to you. That's really, really good, because like the narrative's there. But when you look at Deep Regrets as a game, as a mathematical like conundrum, it's just a really, really nicely explained mathematical conundrum with enough variability in there to like keep you like guessing and keep you engaged, like the different things going forwards. Interestingly, this morning, because every Wednesday morning with the designers in my team, we talk about a subject in video games. And this morning, the subject was like love, and like, what's the best example of love that you've seen in video games? And I deliberately asked that question because it's a really, really complex thing to do. As soon as you start putting mathematical formulas on love, then it becomes like a blunt force trauma thing, that if you really want this person to love you, you can make sure that they love you. And that's why the situations of love is often like taken into a cutscene or something like that. But a board game doesn't have that opportunity for like a cutscene going forward. So you have to look at other things. You have to in a way, simplify the aspects of the subject that you're trying to deal with so that people of all ages, and hopefully most games are made for people of all ages, can like get those like matter of fact subjects and they're like, right, I know exactly what I want to do here. And then I can engage and I can like have that narrative experience within the game as well. So I don't think it's limited to, obviously there's games like Go and like chess, but the book that I learned chess from was a beautiful book that told it in a story. And it told me why the pawns were like that and why the knights were like that and things like this. And it gave them all characters and like identities as it was teaching me chess. And it was just a great way of like me learning. I engaged with that far, far better than I did in other ways. And I've yet to see a game, although there probably is one out there, and I'm sure you can like correct me, where the setup of the game is actually part of the game, because that would be quite beautiful in a sort of like environmental storytelling of actually setting up the game to play the game, and you are already accruing like points for like being involved in that. That would be a very, very interesting thing to experiment with.
Really would. It'd be really difficult. I would wonder how much of gamifying the setup of the game would break the game you're about to play in ways that could be very interesting or absolutely horrific. It depends on, speed, all sorts of things.
Building the board together, though. You can, different elements like that.
I mean, there is a general thing of if everyone, I mean, to be honest, it should always be more putting the game away. People should work together to put the game away.
Especially if it's Gloomhaven.
Especially if it's got lots of pieces, especially if one person usually does it all the time and his brother never does. Nothing personal. No, I think, you know what? We'll keep that for another podcast.
All right. Healthy.
Thank you so much, Phil, for coming to join us and chatting to us about all of these wonderful things today. Compulsion is happening, you said, next April?
Yes, next April, the 11th and 12th.
At the Pleasance up in Edinburgh. If anyone would want to come and join, feel free. If people want to get in contact with you about game design or anything else, or you have any socials or anything that you would like to plug, where would people be in contact with you?
In general, you can find me on socials at Philip G. Harris. I go by Phil, but Phil Harris is quite a famous name of like Baloo the Bear and
that's you too?
The captain of the Greatest Catch and pharmaceutical companies and golfers.
You have your fingers in many.
Yeah, I do a lot of
You
things.
came here for a podcast about board games.
Yes.
We are very privileged.
So Philip G. Harris, 1L for Philip. You can email me at phil.harris@theorstrategy.com, which is like my company. I'm always interested to talk to people about things. Find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to like find me and like get an introduction. If you look Phil Harris, Edinburgh, Tabletop Scotland, OR Strategy, you'll find me. I'm always open to like add people. If you're creepy, I'll stop.
Oh, yeah. Dad,
Fugle?
sorry, yeah. Well, hey, Phil came with no clothes on, so I just want to say no. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I have been Dougal.
And I am Gelb.
And this has been recorded and edited by Ryan Scott. If you liked this, or didn't...
Even if you didn't,
please let us know in the comments or via email or Pigeon, if you've got Pigeon.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like us, drop us a line. And if you don't, do this really, really cool thing where you press follow or like. It actually works against us. So we'll still get the message.
Thank you very much for coming and listening with us, and we'll hear you next time.